Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming tonight. And that introduction was spectacular. A friend of mine wrote that for me many years ago. So as I listened to it, I could see his face, and that was quite a lot of words. I welcome you tonight, and I know that the topic tonight is how to eat healthy to prevent or reduce your risk for cancer. But I think we should all be eating healthy no matter what our goals are in mind. And so you will see that the way I teach is basically good, better, best, because some of the things that we'll go through tonight, you may look down and say, you know what, this is just too much to do. And as I guide my clients on a daily basis, I always tell them to make goals that are obtainable so that they're not feeling stifled by putting together so many goals or goals that are so rough that they just give up. So I would like you to keep that in mind, that you need to start someplace, and small changes are better than no change at all. And we have to make a change in order to see a change. So my message tonight is be aware of what you learned tonight, and think about what you can do and how you can implement it in a way that will be easy for you so that you'll be successful. So as the days go, as I go through the days with my clients, I've realized that there's a new eating disorder, and the disorder has actually been coined, and the phrase is, it's called orthorexia nervosa. So what is orthorexia nervosa? It's when people are so guided by so many healthy issues that they lose sight of what the general picture is all about, and they become so phobic about what they're eating that they often, though the goal is to eat healthy, end up falling from the goal. Does that make sense to you in any way? So it's you'll hear more about it, orthorexia nervosa. And those are the things I try to pull my patients away from. So when I have a client that is setting such lofty goals, and it happens, like sometimes I'll have people come in and they're driven by fear. So they'll tell me, you know what, Debra, I'm going to become vegetarian. I'm going to start working out with a trainer. I'm going to stop smoking. The smoking part is a good idea. The training is a good idea. But then when I would further explore, I'd say, have you ever been vegetarian before? No. Have you worked out with a trainer before? No. When was the last time you tried to stop smoking? I never have. So I want you to really, really think about setting goals that are going to be realistic for you. And I think that the way we laid the program out tonight, you'll be able to do that. But one of the things that I will tell you is that I love to cook, and I cook almost every night. I do have the philosophy of trying to cook once and being able to eat several times from it, because nobody wants to be strapped to the kitchen. But the biggest message I could tell you before I even begin going into detail is that the closer that you cook to scratch, the healthier it's going to be. So it's really the processed foods and the way they've been handled and the ingredients that are added to them that are causing some of the problems that we're seeing today. Do you think you'd all agree with that? Yeah. But it's awfully hard when they're, even my own mother will tell me, I just bought a 12-foot, 12-inch, 1-foot Subway sandwich, and I'm going to eat one half for lunch and another half for dinner. And I keep trying to explain to her, it's so loaded with, it's so processed, and there's so much salt in it, and we don't know where it came from. And she said, well, it came from Subway, and it's only $5, and they gave me a drink. And so I just wonder, we're always, as a dietitian, I feel like I'm always up against the Boulevard. I'm always up against the retailer on the Boulevard. So in order to reduce the risk of cancer, the American Institute of Cancer Research put together 10 guidelines, and I'd like to go through those with you tonight. And I think that they're going to make a lot of sense, because it's really just practicing good nutrition and good lifestyle. The problem when you think about a diet is that a diet usually has an end. This way? I guess my scarf was blocking my microphone. Okay. A diet has an end. So sometimes we diet because we're going to a class reunion, or we diet because we're going to stand up for somebody at their wedding party. But as soon as that event is completed, so is a diet. And I'm always very fearful about that. I've run into so many people even on campus that did extreme diets, and they look great. But they look great for about 15 minutes. So I want you to go at your own pace. And a weight loss goal is not out there for everybody, but eating healthy is. So one of the first protocol that the American Institute of Cancer Research came up with was be as lean as possible without becoming underweight. So that seems like a very reasonable goal. I'm going to give you some steps of how you could do that, but you would be surprised in my daily practice. When I work with people who need to gain weight, you might not believe it, but it's just as difficult to gain weight as it is for people to lose weight. And so, many people struggle, and it's not that they even have, they might have malabsorption, or they might have an organic problem that's interfering with their ability to gain weight. So it's not always just like an anorexia. But it's very difficult to set goals and to be frustrated when you're not gaining weight. So let's talk about being lean. One way to achieve being lean is being physically active every day. And what's recommended is 30 minutes 5 times a week. Oftentimes, when I bring that goal out to the, as a possibility for folks to set up their goals around, they'll tell me 30 minutes, I don't have 30 minutes. I don't have 30 minutes, I've never, and it's hard to move an immobile object. So somebody who's never exercised, if you think you're going to move them from the couch to 30 minutes every day, it's very difficult to do that. So what I start to do is say, what are you capable of? Are you capable of getting out there for 15 minutes once a week, twice a week? Can we build on that? And most of the time, people will be flexible to say that they could build on that. And if it's an issue of time, then just breaking up your workout, like doing 20 minutes in the morning and 20 at night. The days are long. And everybody has access to just being able to walk on the Boulevard, or here we're near in the South Bay, to go down to the beach would be a really nice, soothing way to spend a late afternoon. So how many of you are exercising right now? I know I am too. Maybe a good question is, how many people are not? Oh, okay. Is the difficulty more that you've never exercised before, or are you limited physically? The limitation of physical, yeah. My mother keeps on insisting on breaking the different bones in her body, so she's broken 2 arms already and had a hip replacement, and so she tells me she can't exercise. But you would be surprised, we did get her involved in some chair exercise and working out with rubber bands. And I think as soon as she recovers from her last wrist, she just accidentally fell and broke her wrist, but as soon as that's accomplished, as soon as she heals, we're talking about some water aerobics. So think about it. Everybody could do you could do a little bit of chair exercise perhaps, starting slowly. Water exercise if you have access to a pool. But something that you like to do will be something that you'll sustain. So if it's something that you don't like to do, you probably should consider another activity. It doesn't have to be within a gym setting. So anybody have some of the things that they like to do that are not in a gym setting? Walking. Gardening. Anybody bike ride outside? Biking. That's all activity. Anybody swimming? Swim. Great. Okay, so there's other things, because I think when everybody tends to think of exercise, they tend to think of it within a gym atmosphere. And that doesn't always work for many people. And carrying the cart around in your back pocket doesn't do it either. So I have a lot of clients tell me, but I am a member of 24-Hour Fitness, so when was the last time they saw you there? So the other thing we think about is avoiding sugary drinks and limiting consumption of energy-dense foods. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The sugar, as we'll talk about, has the potential to raise blood glucose and also to put extra insulin floating around in your system. We think that insulin, hyperinsulinemia, might actually support tumor growth. We also think that a lot of the cancers that are driven by the overconsumption of sugar. And I know that there'll be another dietitian that will speak next time, and she'll speak much more closely to those issues. But if you think about how many, when I grew up in the 1950s, this was the size of a soda bottle. And I remember it was a big treat to be able to get a Coca-Cola, because they had them in those little ice box like in the delicatessens, and I couldn't wait to put my hands in the cold water and with the ice and then open up this little treat. Unfortunately, this little treat has grown, and I think that super gulps are about this big. And super gulps can actually put, they bring only sugar to the table, and they bring quite a bit of calories, like 500 to 600 calories to the table. And I was reading in a car magazine, which just I don't have the opportunity to do too often. I was probably sitting in the doctor's office. But they were talking about the cup holders being bigger in the cars because in order to accommodate the big gulps. So we work around the problem. But the next paragraph actually talked about the seats in our cars getting bigger to accommodate us because we're drinking the big gulps. So I want you to be very aware of what you could do with 500 to 600 calories and spread it out much differently, because at the end of the day, your super meal that might have 600 calories of soda pop, if you were to eat 600 calories of a balanced meal, you wouldn't be able to eat your super meal. But when you have a super meal in front of you with a Coke, the brain is really not registering it. So how many people are going to find it a challenge to give up sugary drinks? It's a challenge. Sometimes in my practice, I try to guide my clients to choose perhaps sparkling water, because maybe it's the carbonation that you're looking for, maybe not. Or infused waters with fruits or vegetables, even like cucumber or mint. They give a very nice taste to the water. And water is really the forgotten nutrient. Anybody out here try infused waters with like strawberries or cucumbers or lemons, mint? It's really a nice way to consume water. And these days, because it's so hot out, and as older adults, we're much more prone to dehydration because older adults and young children don't have a lot of muscle mass. And muscle is what holds the water. So we're always looking for our children to be healthy during the hot summer months and for older adults. So I'm happy my mom can't drive right now. So, sure.
Since you're on drinks, Crystal Light, I know a lot of people substitute, Crystal Light for their sugary drinks. Is Crystal Light relatively healthy?
So the question is Crystal Light, because a lot of people will buy the Crystal Light. It's sweetened with Splenda, with sucralose, and then they sell it in little tubes so that you could just put it into your water bottle. Is it healthy? Or it's healthy in that I think it's better for you than just consuming a full-on Coke of that size. But a whole other topic would be how healthy are the non-nutritive sweeteners. And so, people have different reactions to them. And the jury is out. Some of the criticism has come in due to the fact that people who drink Diet Cokes or artificially sweetened beverages still don't satisfy the portion of the brain that wants the sugar. So that's one of the things that we look at. But it would be better than drinking a full-on Coke. And then maybe you can wean from there.
Well, we don't drink sodas in our home, but I noticed that in the summer months we drink more and more of the Crystal Light because of the flavor.
You ever think, yeah. I would try some sun tea, making sun tea or infusing your waters. That might be a better way around it. Okay, they're talking about eating more of a variety of vegetables and fruits and whole grains and legumes, such as beans. Those are all of your phytonutrients, and that's why we're here tonight. And honestly, half of your plate should be filled with lots of vegetables and fruits like berries and melon, and that's where you should get your feeling of fullness. Americans eat quite differently. I have a few slides of how we like to eat. We like to eat a big steak right in the middle of the plate, and then the potatoes dangling off the side. Or we eat a big plate of pasta, and in Italy they eat a very small portion of pasta. It's a second dish, and it's about the size of your fist. But we eat differently in America. I mean, I think that when you think about pizza, stuffing the crust of pizza with more cheese and delivering it with chicken tenders and chorizo, the sugared desserts, it's not really the best plan, even if you're under a time crunch. So we're going to talk a lot about vegetables tonight and limiting the consumption. This is a very interesting one for number 5, limiting the consumption of red meat such as beef, pork, and lamb, and avoiding all processed meat. Because there has been a recent study that came out in March that that says that there's not that much difference between saturated fat, poly, and mono. Even though we, as dietitians, have always suggested the poly and monounsaturates as a major part of your fat consumption. Now they're saying there might not be that much difference. But I will tell you one thing. There'll always be a difference in the waistline because fats offer you dense dense calories for a small volume. And processed meats, where you find all of your sodium and fat, are the ones that they really want off the table in order to reduce your risk for cancer. And that includes everybody's favorite bacon, sausage, salami, bologna, smoked meats, cured meats, because they feel that in the processing, that's where the increased risk for cancer comes in. And when we talk about meat, just red meat in general, we're talking about 11 to 18 ounces per week. So that quarter pounder, or the, a steak that people could sit down and eat a ribeye or a fillet, anything, or spare ribs, but we eat them in portions of at least 10 ounces. But we're talking about 11 ounces to 18 for the whole week. So anybody have homework to do there?
Is there a distinction between chicken and turkey?
Right. I would just tell you to buy, chicken that has not been heavily processed, because even when you buy a chicken breast, like at Costco, and you could buy them, they already have the markings on them. So they usually have additional, they have additional preservatives. So fresh is best. And I make at least one turkey breast every couple of weeks because I don't like buying processed turkey. So I buy a fresh turkey breast, and I just load out under the skin with olive oil and rosemary and garlic and fresh herbs. And actually, the barbecuing that we like to do over the summer months, and it's been criticized, the flare-ups on the barbecue have been criticized for its carcinogenic effect. But I was reading an article recently that was quite interesting. They say if you cover your chicken or burger or beef with rosemary, even rosemary you make a paste of with olive oil, it cuts down on the carcinogenic effect. And it tastes good. And rosemary grows like wildfire. And also rosemary, even when you buy it in the market, it lives forever for some darn reason. It seems to hang around my refrigerator for a long time. So that might be a way around some of your barbecue this season. So people, yes? I think the bacon this gentleman has a question about the variety or the different types of bacon. So the bacon that I actually suggest to my clients would be the heart healthy bacon, which is Canadian bacon. And you could usually find it comes packaged with a little heart on it at Trader Joe's. But it's actually boiled ham. And your best bet to reduce sodium and reduce the fat in the deli meats that you're buying would be to go up to the deli counter and purchase from the deli counter the less processed meats. So you could buy low sodium turkey and low sodium chicken and low sodium ham. And that might serve you well for your breakfast meal if you're having a difficult time giving up your bacon. Also try to point my clients to the markets. For many of my clients, like my mom who loves Subway or Quiznos, I try to get them to go into their local market to order a sandwich. Because at that point, you're able to select the type of meat that you'd like. You could select low sodium. You could select a reduced fat cheese. You're not limited to what looks like wheat bread, at Subway, but it's not real wheat bread. It's just been filled with molasses. My husband is a type 2 diabetic, and when he travels through the airports, he always eats the tuna fish sandwich from Subway on wheat bread. And then I get a phone call, and he'll tell me that, my blood sugar went up to 210. And I'll say, did you eat at Subway? Did you have a tuna on wheat? How did you know that? So it's like, it doesn't take much to keep track of habits. So it wasn't too hard to figure out. But I would suggest a whole grain bread. And go to your local market. They compete with the Boulevard. So you'll be able to get something that's bundled. You'll be able to bundle it with a small salad or maybe a baked chip. And your beverage of choice might be water. That would be my suggestion. But they usually offer you Cokes as well. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, but if consumed at all, we say limit alcoholic drinks to 2 for men and 1 for women a day. And then in the diabetic culture, we always say that must be taken with food because we want to avoid hypoglycemia. So what would be a portion? Because I know I come home from work sometimes and it's late, it's about 7 o'clock, and my husband's on the couch and he's very relaxed. He said he's only had 1 glass of wine. But you know how big our goblets are? So we have to bring it down to portion. Okay. So portion, 12 ounces of beer would be considered 1 portion, 5 ounces of wine, or 1.5 ounces of your hard liquor. And if you're diabetic, be careful what you blend your hard liquor with, because it's really the margarita mix more than the tequila that raises blood glucose. So be careful. Now there's a lot of skinny mixes on the marketplace. I know that. Anybody going to have trouble with that homework? No?
Is there any
Nobody.
Is there any benefit to having alcohol?
You know, yes, but we have a saying in nutrition and we say, you know, the red wines we know have antioxidant qualities, but we have a saying and it goes something like this: if you don't drink, don't start. So. Okay, so limiting consumption of salty foods and foods processed with salt. For many people, when they try to give up the salt shaker, and I know that I love salt. My 2 favorite food groups are salt and fat. So Hawaiian chips are my favorite. I mean, it was like, wow, heaven. And I didn't know how it always ended up on my passenger seat when I go to the market. And all of my cleaning things ended up in the trunk. And then I would, you know, pull into my driveway with greasy hands, but that was a few years ago. So, I cannot keep chips in my house. It's a trigger food for me. So it would wake me up at night. Though I don't know anybody who's ever gets up in the middle of the night for more broccoli, but chips or tiramisu will call you up. So limiting your sodium, and we say to about 2,000 milligrams to 2,300 milligrams a day. A teaspoon, I don't have my teaspoon with me, but a teaspoon of salt is equal to 2,400 milligrams. So I do use salt at home, but very sparingly, and I use Himalayan salt. That's that pink salt. And I do that because it has a variety of other micronutrients. But you still have to be careful if you are sensitive to sodium as it affects your blood pressure, then you're going to want to keep a close eye on it. But giving up the salt shaker is not enough. So I know my grandma used to hide the salt shaker from me when I came to her house. I mean, I always knew where it was, but she hid it nevertheless. So, and she cooked from scratch. But when we're not cooking from scratch, when we're using a lot of processed product, my advice to you is it's not enough to give up your salt shaker. You need to start to consider less processed food. And the problem with less processed food is that it's not so, you need to take a little bit more time with it. Gentleman in the back. Oh, I think the rest of them would fall under white or gray. And some of the gray salts also have micronutrients. So it would be your choice. I like the taste of the Himalayan salt, and I know that salt at one time was exchanged as gold. So we do need a certain amount of sodium, but not the quantities that we're using nowadays because of the processed foods. The good thing about sodium is that you could taste it. So if somebody gives you a bowl of soup and they say, oh, I didn't make it with any salt and nothing in there is salty, you could taste it. So sometimes you could just rely on your good old taste buds to give you that distinction. How's everybody going to do with giving up salt? Horrible. So that's when fresh herbs, anti-inflammatory herbs and seasonings, this is the topic of trying to keep your body healthy. So using turmeric and cumin and garlic and fresh grown herbs, your rosemary. Those are a nice addition to meats and salads and soups and chicken. And I just think it's just our exposure or what we're used to in terms of habit. So if you were to just start to buy some more And I would recommend that if you haven't worked with herbs before, and they can be quite pricey, there's some nice little international markets that are scattered on the Boulevard on Pacific Coast Highway. I don't live in this end of town, but I know I stop there quite a bit. So you could buy bunches of parsley and basil and mint, and you could buy usually 3 bunches for $1. Whereas if you're going to purchase it in the supermarket, it's going to be a lot more than that. But if you're purchasing organic, you will pay, a little bit more, but it's probably worth it. And if you are not able to afford the organic, just wash your fruits and your vegetables and your herbs really well. Yes? So I do a couple of things with my fresh herbs. So I either take a damp, I wash them, and then I take a damp, just paper towel, and I just wrap them in a paper towel and I put them in the refrigerator. If you really want to preserve them and use them in soups later, you could actually just blenderize them with a little bit of olive oil and maybe a little bit of garlic and put them into your ice cube trays. And then you could take it out and use it and drop it into soup or drop it into a casserole, and it would be a nice, easy way to do that. And then, because I think in the bottom line, we throw away so much food. How much food do we throw away? If I send my husband to buy berries at Costco, he'll never turn over the package, so inevitably he comes home with the only one that has the mold underneath it. So sometimes it's a good alternative, especially with berries. And we know the antioxidant qualities of berries are what we're looking for. We know it's alive with antioxidants. If it stains your shirt, then we know that it has things qualities that are alive and are going to benefit you. So I buy frozen berries, like a medley of frozen berries, and I keep them in the freezer. And they're great in shakes. They might not look nice to serve on a cheese tray, but you could use them in different recipes.
Are they just as good or almost as good as fresh?
I would tell you yes. I think the negative response to frozen food is just how heavily processed it is at times. And vegetables with added butter sauce or cream sauce or cheese sauce is not going to be what you're looking for. But if you just buy flash frozen vegetables and flash frozen fruit, we think that they might actually have more nutrients because they haven't been dragged through the marketplace. And then inevitably when you're reaching for one of them, the water comes up. So many times they've been watered on the shelf. So I would tell you frozen is great. I always have frozen spinach in the house, frozen kale, frozen berries, and a mixed bag of just frozen vegetables altogether.
They're not washed though before they're frozen.
I'm assuming they're washed on the farm. I'm assuming. Okay. Another thing, I know that how many people take lots of supplements because we think that it really is a big benefit? I see somebody's hand in the back. Oh, some people do. But the advice that's coming down is that we'd rather, especially with the antioxidants, that you get them from the food source rather than from the pill form. So lots of fruits and vegetables. And a little bit of a good thing might not be so good, especially of the fat-soluble vitamins. So we're looking, either you're going to have expensive urine or you might not be doing yourself so much good. So we're saying don't use your supplements to protect you against cancer. Yeah.
I've heard of something called whole food supplements in place of vitamins. Have you heard of that, or do you think that's better than vitamins?
So what would that be exactly?
Like it's supposed to be a supplement made from food instead of processed vitamins.
And does it come like in powdered form? Yeah. Yeah, that would be a nice way of getting it. But why not use fresh berries and fresh kale? But that would be a good supplement. And a multivitamin for your age is probably a good idea just to cover your bases. It's just when I watch my husband take fistfuls of vitamins. It's just amazing to me. And I was really concerned about how much A and how much E he was consuming. So I went through, took like a whole Saturday afternoon to get through his cabinet filled with vitamins and to try to weed out what I thought was important and what he really didn't need. And I do that with clients as well. Sometimes they take things they don't even know why they're taking them. I don't know how many people are breastfeeding, but we do suggest that mothers who breastfeed exclusively for 6 months and then add other liquids and foods reduce the risk of cancer in the mom and in the child. So if you're about to start a family, or if you have grandkids, or who are about to have children, that might be a good suggestion. And after treatment, cancer survivors should follow the same recommendations that we just went through. So the problem is the Boulevard. So every day we're always confronted with so many choices, so many choices. I mean, if you don't take the time to pre-plan what you'll be eating, you're going to fall victim. So how many people think about it the night I do, because I'm always thinking about food, but how many people think about what they're going to eat tomorrow? Good show of hands. That's a really good show of hands. Because for some people, if I see them at lunchtime or after lunch in my office and I ask them, well, what do you think you might be eating for dinner? Nobody knows. And the problem with nobody knowing is that there's never going to be an absence of food. There's always going to be a Taco Bell, a Domino's Pizza, a Subway. There's something on every boulevard. So I want you to think, as part of my homework to you would be, think about what you're going to eat tomorrow, because I think it's important. And if it helps to even write it down, because that way, when you have a plan that you write down, you tend to stick with it. Okay, so watch your weight. 65% of Americans are overweight or obese, and only 6% of Americans identify being overweight or obese as a risk factor of cancer, despite a clearly established scientific link. Yes?
I have one quick question. How healthy is the polio loco?
Gosh. I would just tell you, I know the side dishes aren't great. I'll repeat the question. This young lady back here is asking, how healthy is Pollo Loco? So I think it's better than the fried fish sandwich at McDonald's. I think that you would probably want to take the skin off if possible if you're watching your weight. And then watch your side dishes, because the side dishes, the beans.
No, sometimes when I'm lazy, I'll just go buy the chicken.
Yeah.
But I do eat the skin.
So I would tell you, try not to eat, then don't order the wings. The wings are all skin. So you're not really getting too much nourishment out of it. I think it's a healthier choice than going out and buying, a pizza that's loaded with sausage and pepperoni and then again eating it stuffed with, and then again I go back to good, better, best. So every day is you're not going to see the best, but you could make good choices in between. What was that? Oh, cutoff time for eating. It's actually, I would tell you, no, I would just tell you, don't eat a heavy meal 2 hours before you go to sleep. And then remember that whatever you're eating is a cumulative amount of calories. And if you're subject to GERD or any kind of, acid reflux, and you eat a big meal and you lay down on the couch, it's really going to come back to you, and not in a good way. So I would tell you, mind your whole day. One of the principles I'm about to approach is to eat about every 5 hours. So for diabetics, we know that if they eat an early dinner at 5 o'clock or 4:30 and they don't go to sleep until midnight, we oftentimes suggest a small snack, and it's not Oreos and milk. But it might help to help their morning fasting numbers.
Because the reason I make the statement is to ask the question is because some people, they hang out in the office until 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then they leave and take them an hour, sometimes 2 hours to get home.
So for those people, when I see them, he's saying that some people are workaholics. They're at work until 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and then they have to hit the freeway. And they might not have had anything to eat before, since their lunch meal. So I would try to get them to put in a 3 o'clock snack. Or I would try to get them to eat something before they get into their car to go home, so that when they hit their kitchen, they're not ravenous. Because so many times when you prepare dinner, if you're so overly hungry, you could eat your dinner before you even sit down to eat dinner. And for those, I tell you, cook with gum in your mouth. because if you have to take it out, you're going to realize what you're doing. So we know that the research has shown us that fat cells act as a hormone pump. And so we want you to get down as close to ideal body weight as possible. Talking about the guidelines for exercise, I mean, they are hefty guidelines. And I would just tell you that I would ask you to try to fit exercise in more days than not. But if you're an immobile object, then set realistic goals. Think about chair exercise, water exercise, and if 2 days a week is the only time you could do it the 2 days a week. Then you'll start to build on that. We know that physical activity lowers the link to breast cancer, prostate, and colorectal cancer. So this is the plate, and you have it in your handout. It's put out by the Harvard School of Medicine. And when we talk about a plate, by the way, we're referring to a plate that is 9 inches. Because just as our glasses have grown, I mean, I don't think anybody has a glass this big. So just as our glasses have grown, so have our dishes, so have our soup bowls. And the cereal bowl boxes are this big, and our cereal bowls are this big. When I grew up, I never liked cereal, but this was about as big as a bowl was. Yeah. So now the kids are over-consuming cereal, and they don't get the portion distortion because the box is so big, so you don't run out that quickly. So, and then our cutlery has been an accommodating factor too, because we have bigger spoons. And I know that many times I reach for my soup spoon, and I actually think it's a serving spoon. So be very aware of the size of your plates, and it might be a good idea to use your salad plate rather than your big dinner plate. Because my dinner plate doesn't even fit into my cabinets. I can't close my cabinet flush. And the soup bowl that came with that set was so big that I was actually able to get a quart of chicken soup just for fun into the bowl. Because I came home one day with chicken soup, and I thought, I wonder if I can get the whole chicken soup, this whole quart, into this bowl. And I was able to. Portion distortion. So be really aware of portion distortion. So we want half of your plate. We would like you to start out using oils like olive oil, canola oil for cooking and on salads, limiting butter and avoiding trans fats. Are you aware of what the trans fats actually are? Trans fats are actually made or man-made. So it's when you take a liquid vegetable oil and make it solid through the process of hydrogenation that it becomes a trans fat. And we know that that is directly related to increasing your LDL, your bad cholesterol. And so even a new study that doesn't delineate between the good fats and the bad fats, although I have my opinion, I'm still going to eat the mono and polys, but it doesn't delineate it as it affects your cardiovascular system. But one thing they strongly, strongly recommended was to eliminate trans fats. And one of the places that you're going to find it that you probably don't think about is from Coffee Mate. So Coffee Mate, all your Coffee Mates or powdered creamers, they're loaded with trans fats. And the government is allowed to write 0 trans fat if it has less than 1/2 gram. But the portion size for liquid Coffee Mate is a tablespoon. So nobody uses a tablespoon when you're pouring it in. But people are addicted to it because they like the flavor. So this is what I would tell you. Buy a regular milk, go to Smart and Final and buy Tarani's sugar-free syrups, because they'll have your favorite flavor like vanilla or hazelnut or whatever it is that you have that attachment to. And then use a little creamer, buy a little creamer bowl and put in your milk and your sweetener. And then when you need it in the morning, you just pour it. So you don't have to start from scratch. Does that sound reasonable? So I was online with my husband in the market, and he doesn't come with me to the market too often, and somebody next to me was buying a Coffee Mate that was like this big, like the biggest gallon. So I just put my 2 cents in and said it was filled with trans fats. And my husband said, "You can't be saying this." So he said, "I am so out of here." He left. I couldn't even find him in the parking lot. And he will never go shopping with me again. So we want more vegetables on your plate, more fruits, more berries, more fresh vegetables. Everybody is afraid of vegetables, but you can make so many nice salad recipes like you're going to see tonight. And if you have to, even buy your vegetable. I think the barrier is that you have to spend more time cleaning it and cutting it and chopping it. But you could buy mushrooms already cut. You could buy vegetables that are already pre-washed, and you'll pay a little bit more. But nobody minds, plunking down $4.50 for a latte. So, yeah. No, that's perfectly okay. It's where you'll find your trans fat will be from stick margarine, like the imperial margarine, that crown on your head. You need to get rid of it because I'm really open-minded about everybody's finances these days. And even though we say canned vegetables have too much sodium, you can eliminate some of the sodium by running it through a colander. But if you and then the next time around, buy fresh or buy frozen, flash frozen. But with the solid stick margarine, I would tell you march right to your trash can and throw it out. You're much better off with butter. So lots of fruits, whole grains. So this plate really takes the time. They don't consider potatoes as a vegetable. So eat whole grains like brown rice, whole wheat bread, and whole grain pasta, and limiting your refined grains like the white rice and the white bread. And Ellen is going to talk to you a little bit more about quinoa, which we know is like a very high protein, high fiber, ancient Peruvian grain. And in fact, the Incas used to eat it before they went into battle because it supported them with so much nutrients. How many people eat like this? Good. That's very good to see. Everybody else, we have homework. So we talk about in addition to weight control, fruits and vegetables offer protective effects. So we know that they're not as calorie dense. So that's why we want you to fill half of your plate with fruits and vegetables. And I actually have a sculpture like this in my house. That's one of my favorite things. So we're going to talk about the phytonutrients that we get from fruits and vegetables. What are they? They're plant foods. We know that plant foods contain thousands of natural chemicals. And the phytochemical refers to the Greek word for plant. And these chemicals help to protect the plant themselves. So when the plants are growing, to protect them from fungus or sunburn, they take advantage. They can't take vitamin pills, so their own phytonutrients help protect them. But we could reap the benefits by including more of those plant foods on our plate. How many people think you have homework in order to get more fruits and vegetables into your... Yeah, okay. How do they work? They stimulate the enzymes that help the body detoxify. They reduce the genetic damage from cancer-causing agents. And they may interfere with the growth and multiplication of cancer cells. And they decrease inflammation. So those are all of your antioxidants. And I put a nice sheet into your handouts. I think that's coming up next on the slides. So we say if it stains your shirt, you're in good company. So the phytochemicals, you can go through them and use them as reference because I don't want to take up this whole program, but basically we're saying, include lutein from green vegetables like broccoli and spinach and kale. It helps to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. It helps to protect your eyes, and it is considered an antioxidant. And your keratin, your orange and yellow fruits and vegetables help increase your immune system, helps prevent liver and lung cancer, skin cancer as well. So all of that is provided for you right here on the sheet, and you can go through it. And when it comes to like your lycopene that you get from tomatoes, a lot of your fruits and vegetables do well, especially tomatoes. They do great with the lycopene is more available if you use it with like an olive oil or a good fat, or say an avocado or olive oil, because lycopene is fat soluble, so you get more punch out of it. So we say yes, probably cooked tomatoes like ketchup, tomato sauce, some tomato juices are probably more available. The lycopene will be more available. But raw vegetables, raw tomatoes are also a good addition to your plate. And I eat tomatoes at almost every meal. So food first. So I just want to reinforce the idea that you're not trying to get it from a pill. And I just want to review 10 basic principles. So So I want you to plan a snack every 4 to 5 hours. Choose carbohydrates that are high in fiber and low in fat. So from your carbohydrates, that's the only place in nature that you will find fiber. Fiber is the undigestible part of a fruit or a vegetable. So especially for my diabetic group, we always ask them to choose fruits and vegetables high in fiber. Limit concentrated sweets, and we know that from the beginning of the lecture. Include lean proteins with each meal. Lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. Choose unsaturated fats over saturated. Limit your sodium from processed foods. Exercise 30 minutes 5 times a week. These are the ideals. Drink at least 5 glasses of water and become familiar with your habits. I think until you write it down, you don't know what your habits are. And my mother used to make boiled corn for, with a meal, but she would forget about it, so we always got it for dessert. So I always thought till I was 8 years old that corn on the cob was dessert because she would forget. So I went to somebody's home and they asked me what I wanted for dessert, so I said corn on the cob. So then they called my mother, and then her timing improved in the kitchen because she was terribly embarrassed. So become familiar with your habits. That was just a habit. I didn't know. It was a cultural habit in my family. And one of the best ways to become familiar with your habits is to write it down, because then you have an ongoing journal. Especially if you're pretty stable between your breakfast and your lunch, but 3 o'clock on is your most difficult time, then only write that down. Because when you ask somebody to, or give them the task of writing down what they're eating, they really kick back at you. That I'm experienced with that. So write down the most difficult part of the day for you. So it's it's not really brain surgery, but just because they're both orange, it doesn't mean that that a fruit would be much better. Because many of my clients will say, I'm diabetic, I can't have oranges. But you could have a small orange, and they provide a minimal amount of calories with lots of fiber and phytonutrients. So our typical American plate, as I mentioned earlier, might look like that. But we're really asking you to put more plant product on your plate. So more beans and legumes and grains. And we're going to have a beautiful quinoa salad demonstration as soon as I'm done talking. Include 5 to 10 servings of fruit and vegetables each day. And richly colored plant foods are the richest in phytonutrients. Alcohol, for those of you who had homework with that. Yes?
What would you suggest, you went to alcohol so quickly, but what would you suggest that brown bag lunches for children look like?
I would also expect it to include vegetables, like maybe cut vegetables. Will your kids be receptive to that? A whole grain bread with unprocessed meat or peanut butter. Be a great lunch. And for those of you, I didn't get to this, but for those of you who don't really like to cook, there's a new product out called Luvo. It's a frozen meal. And I know we're sponsored by Whole Foods tonight, but it's only being sold at Bristol Farms and Ralph's. And Dr. Mark Hyman, who is pretty big in the field of nutrition, sits on their board. And any of the animal product that they use in their meals are all hormone-free and antibiotic-free. And they don't have the little black microwavable containers that also offer the BPAs. So they're actually in paper containers, in a paper sack. Yes. It's called Luvo, Luvo. And they're really quite good. They're sodium and calorie controlled. But you'll have to cook up a big side of vegetables because the portions are small. And that's where you're going to get your vegetables from. Alcohol. We talked about 1 drink a day for women and 2 for men. Increasing folate intake may reduce the risk of breast cancer associated with alcohol use.
What about red wine?
Yeah, your red wine is fine. It's an antioxidant, but limit your quantities is what we're saying, because too much alcohol interferes with cardiovascular health. So the limited meat, as we're talking about, just the 11 to 18 ounces of red meat. We also, I think what's most interesting is studies show that people who eat more meat often eat less plant-based foods. And potatoes don't count, so your steak and potato doesn't really do it. The bottom line, when it comes to fats, I just put that on top, is no trans fats. And I encourage my clients to go for mono and polyunsaturates, limiting the saturated fats that are often used. You find them in more processed foods, like your salami, bologna, sausage, bacon. The coconut oil is always a good question. So the studies that they did with coconut oil was actually done with coconut oil that was hydrogenated. So we're asking you to look for cold pressed coconut oil. And it's used for a variety of reasons right now. You know, people are using it in their cooking. They're using it. I had one of my friends, my friend who wrote the beginning of my introduction, called me with a gout attack and told me he put coconut oil on his toe. So I don't know that that helps, but but it's amazing how it's become mainstream. But you must make sure it's not hydrogenated. That's the most important part of it.
Question in addition to that. Coconut oil, I know it's known to be really high in saturated fat, and so is olive oil. So what's your opinion on that in terms of saturated fat content?
So it is high in saturated fat, but we're saying the more natural it is, the less hydrogenated, the less processed it is. We feel that the body, there are trans fats in cheese, naturally occurring trans fats in cheese and red meat, that the body is able to process much more efficiently than the man-made trans fats. So if that might have answered your question. Omega-3s that you find in herring and salmon and sardines, we try to aim for 4 ounces of an oily fish a week, 2 to 3 times a week. How many people include fish in the diet? Yeah, me too. Somebody had a question? That would be great. That would be great. And avocados themselves are great. A portion of an avocado, I mean, anytime you're looking at a fat, predominantly fat food, like avocado or nuts, you're bringing in more calories. Did something happen to my mic?
Yeah.
Your battery?
But avocados are a great addition to meals. Actually, the new studies have indicated that a half an avocado at lunch might cut down on your after-lunch snacking.
Why in here it says limit yourself to 1/4?
It's only for calories. It's the waistline only. Yeah. It's the waistline only.
You have guidelines for nuts?
So nuts, yes, we do. So again, nuts are very, if they're heart healthy foods, providing that they're dry roasted or raw, or you could buy raw and then cook them in your oven. Just don't take a phone call and eat it because you don't do a lot of money. Let's say about 1/4 of a cup a day. But if weight and your waistline is not your problem, then it's fine. Keep on eating nuts and nut butter. Natural would be better. Let me just take this question.
For someone that has allergy to all nuts, what's the alternative?
Well, out of the nut family, not much, but out of monofats, olive oil, avocados. I'm sorry that you have that allergy. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what would be a good. I mean, you could buy garbanzo beans and like toast them in your oven, and they would kind of give you the feeling of a nut, but it wouldn't give you the same properties.
Macadamia nut?
Yeah, they're heavy in calories.
Someone has an allergy.
So you could still get your omega-3s from flaxseed or flaxseed oil. That would probably be a good way to go to get those omega-3s that you're not getting from your fish. That's a monounsaturated, that's a fine oil to use. We just want you to stay away or use less of your vegetable oil, soy oil, safflower oil, because they're rich with omega-6s. And there's only a certain amount that your body will accept in terms of the 6s and the 3s. And livestock are fed a diet rich in omega-6s. So you don't always get all the benefits of your omega-3s. So that's why we would prefer that you use like your olive oil, grapeseed oil, rapeseed, better alternative. Okay, so again, it's a review of the studies with vitamins that the more is not always better, especially with your fat-soluble A&E. Some of the studies have shown that it actually is contributed more to lung cancer rather than reducing your risk. And then insulin and cancer, that comes up quite a bit. So we know that excess insulin can promote tumor growth. So behaviors that increase insulin levels are consumption of refined sugars, overeating, weight gain, sedentary lifestyle. We're asking you more to reduce it with physical activity, weight loss, and eating unrefined carbs. So when look for a carbohydrate serving of at least 3 to 5 grams of fiber, and as close to natural as possible, not processed. The organic. This is something that I was looking for some research that would support organic. But unfortunately, and I actually posted on my Facebook, I do like a NutriHints. And some of the studies really don't show that there's a difference between organic or not. That's unfortunate because it may be the pesticides are I'm sure that they're interfering with our health. So if you're not buying organic because of price or availability, just make sure you wash your vegetables really thoroughly. And I was saying I was overseas in my sister-in-law's kitchen and I saw her take a tomato and wash it with dishwasher soap, and I was like, I almost fell over, but because I was worried about eating in the house for the rest of the week. But there are products high in acid content that you could buy at Whole Foods. I'm sure that they would give us the names of some of their product that you can rinse your vegetables in.
But isn't the pesticide absorbed by the fruit itself?
Yeah, well, that's why we say organic is better, though it hasn't. So don't let,
How much to wash it, it's already.
especially watery fruits. So I would tell you, don't avoid vegetables because of the pesticides, just clean them. And then in your packet, we gave you the Dirty Dozen. So you can use that as reference.
Do you suggest using the soap that they have for vegetables?
Yeah, I would definitely use that. Don't run them through your dishwasher, though. So people used to, in the 80s, run their potatoes through the dishwasher. Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a break for questions. And this is actually, so your pamphlet includes the Dirty Dozen. And so you can use it as reference. And I thank you for your attention tonight. And I think I probably took up a bunch of Ellen's time. But I hope that you learned something. If the message is only good, better, best, but to start to make some small changes.
Thank you so much. First, I want to say I think Debra and I really have enjoyed the opportunity to work together. I'm not a registered dietitian, so there's definitely a level of expertise that Debra brings. I can only say about myself that I love food. I mean, I am so fortunate to work in a business that I'm truly passionate about. And the opportunity to work in healthcare and impact change in people's lives through food, I think is wonderful because food to most people brings back great memories. Whether it's from childhood or a favorite meal, there's a comfort in food. And I think there is a way to have that sense of comfort, but at the same time make it be healthful. So Debra did touch on a lot of things that I was going to expand upon, but at the same time I want to keep it to some information that she didn't touch on, and again leave time for questions. First and foremost, I want to say that good eating to me is simple, whole foods. And for me, that is, my grandmother always had a sweet tooth, and growing up, she always had chocolate cake. But it was chocolate cake she made, and I remember we'd get a very thin slice of that chocolate cake, and it tasted wonderful to me. And I never found that in a bakery or in an Entenmann's box or something that was processed in a large, big plant somewhere. So to me, it is about being very mindful of the nutritional labels. And I share an office with a dietitian, so we joke about the fact that she's probably looking at the back of the package to see what the calories are, and I'm reading the ingredients. Because to me, if I can't pronounce it, and it takes 2 lines to put the word on there, is it something I really want to put in my mouth? And for me, it's no. So I'm just a big believer in really look at the ingredients. It doesn't matter what you're buying. It's funny to me, in this, I'm going to get out of order a little bit, but making this salad tonight, I picked the quinoa because to me, it's something that I'm hoping people will try, and when you see and hear how easy it is to make, you'll go home and actually do it. Otherwise, I think when you see it dry and on a store shelf, you're probably thinking, I don't know what that tastes like. I don't know that I would want to make that. But, and the recipe we gave you, most of the recipes have dressings that we've made. They're very simple, but I'm also a believer in shortcuts. I have a 3.5-year-old and an 8-month-old at home. So the idea of getting out my food processor or blender, that's something I have to take apart and wash at the end. There's Newman's Own, Annie's dressings. There's salad dressing lines out there that if you flip over that bottle and look at the ingredients, you're going to recognize what's in it. So that would be my thing there. Shortcuts are okay, but just read the ingredients, and you're going to know right there, is it good for me or not? I'm a huge proponent of organic, not necessarily because it's scientifically based, but I have to share a story. My sister lives in the Salinas, Monterey area, which is a huge producer of lettuce, strawberries. Most of our produce that we have here in Southern California in the grocery stores comes from that area. She sent me a picture one day on her drive to work, and there was red caution tape around the lettuce field. It looked like a biohazard scene. And it was because they had just sprayed the fields, so nobody was allowed in. 2 days later, all the lettuce had been picked and is on its way to the grocery store. My thought was, how it wasn't safe to go into that field, but 2 days later, it's on a shelf in your grocery store. Is it safe then? So it's a very political topic, and there isn't, as Debra mentioned, tons of scientific evidence to back buying organic. But I would say look at that dirty dozen list. And if you're going to make any choices to buy organic, really look at that list and pick those items. Somebody just came up and asked about GMOs, genetically modified organisms, or GMIs, which is genetically modified ingredients. Again, here in the US, there is not a lot of research saying that those are dangerous or cancer causing. I would say it's fact that the European Union has banned them. And a lot of other countries. I think the woman came up and said Peru, a few other countries had. So there's research out there somewhere saying that those probably aren't the best thing. Unfortunately, here in this country, due to food labeling laws, a company, Cheerios doesn't have to put that there's genetically modified organisms in the Cheerios. By law, they don't have to. So really the only way to know here in the States that you're not consuming those is to buy organic. I don't buy everything organic, but again, look at the list. If you can make a few changes, I would. But at the end of the day, as Debra mentioned, if you're cooking at home as much as possible with whole ingredients, the health benefits are going to be amazing. And again, if you go to Costco and you see a chicken breast that has grill marks on it, that probably didn't happen with somebody at a barbecue putting those marks on there. And I have to say that having worked in food so long, I've been to a lot of facilities that process food. I've been to the Tyson chicken facility in Arkansas. I've been to pasta factories even. And you'd be amazed. Marketing people do a great job of making the package look really nice and trying to sell you with very fresh-looking advertising. But I would say read ingredients, and just as much as you can cook at home with whole ingredients that you purchase, you're going to be so much better off. And I always was pretty, for lack of a better word, neurotic about my food, but having young children too, it's something that's really big for me. Yes, sir? I'm. Oh, Tyson chicken plant. Yeah, he wants to know a little bit about the processing plant. I will say this, it's an amazing facility. It was very clean. But the chicken goes from egg to package in the same building. So that was fascinating, and I'm a meat eater. I don't not eat meat because of that. I have to say the next time I ate chicken, I kind of thought a little more about it. But I think that's important. I think we need to think about our food more. I think we need to think about where it comes from. When you go to the meat section of the grocery store and everything's in these nice styrofoam trays with the clean cellophane around it and everything's been taken off for you. You go to a lot of other countries, and if you buy chicken, you're buying the whole thing, and maybe they took the head off for you. Most people would be taken aback by that, but I think that there's an awareness when you see your food in that state makes you more conscious of what you're eating and how much of it you're eating. So it was a great experience to go there. It didn't deter me from eating chicken, but I do buy chicken. I don't buy Tyson chicken. I buy antibiotic-free chicken because antibiotics, again, are, you know, when you raise 200 chickens in a very small area, you have to give them antibiotics so they don't share disease. And there's some evidence that says that all of those antibiotics are then something we're ingesting, and it makes us more resistant to certain bacteria. So again, I you know, years ago, I probably had chicken 3 or 4 nights a week. Well, now I spend more money on the chicken I buy, so I'm much more conscious. I can tell you I don't throw chicken away in my house. If there's a half a breast left, it's getting saved or frozen or something. 1, because it was expensive to me, and 2, as Debra said, the statistics of how much food we throw away in this country really are staggering. So to answer that, good experience. If you're ever down in Arkansas, look at the Tyson chicken plant. I don't think they do public tours, but just think about what you know, where food comes from in the grocery store. I would say if it has an ingredient label, read it. If it's in a styrofoam tray with cellophane, really look and think about how did that chicken get in that package? How far did it come? So I think if, for me, I'd rather eat less meat and have the quality be higher than have meat on my plate every night and not be exactly sure what's in it. So that's just my theory on that. Really quick, and if you guys have questions afterwards, I want to leave plenty of time for that, but I do want to talk about quinoa. That's why I had Debra kind of stay up here if people have more questions that I can't specifically answer. It is a really high protein grain, as opposed or comparatively speaking to white or brown rice, especially as a carbohydrate. It is, and it's so tasty. I mean, I have to be honest with you, it was only a few years ago that I really tried it, and now I'm hooked because I love the versatility of it. Today we're going to make a cold salad with it, but I've had it hot with sauteed mushrooms as a side dish. I've had it cold, so I'll make some on Sunday nights because, like I said, I have 2 kids. I work here all day. People always ask my husband, you must eat so well at home. He's like, not really. Not really. I do try, as Debra said, to plan, because if I don't plan, before I had kids, I'd stop at the grocery store every day. I'd be driving home and be like, what am I going to make tonight? Something fabulous. Now I don't have that time luxury anymore. So for me, Sundays, I plan my menus. And I do as much prep as I can. And I don't do it every week, but on a Sunday night, I'll cook a pound of quinoa. We'll have something hot with it that night. I'll add chicken. And then the rest I'll spread on a baking sheet, stick in the refrigerator so it cools down quickly. And that's just a food safety note. Anytime you're trying to cool like a dense food, you want to spread it out thin. Otherwise, it's going to take hours to cool in your refrigerator, and bacteria starts to grow. So I like to point that out, that disclaimer. Rimmed baking sheet, spread it out thin, put it in the fridge, and then when it cools, put it into different containers. And I'll make 2 or 3 different salads throughout the week. Some will have chicken, some will have shrimp. You know, it'll be really versatile. And you'll see in your recipe packet all of the recipes we have. Don't be afraid to change things. I'm not a big green bell pepper person. I like the red and yellow, so I'll substitute that. Or maybe you have some asparagus. You have like 2 spears of asparagus left in the bottom drawer of your refrigerator. These salads are a great way to mix and use up the rest of those vegetables that you have sitting around. Don't throw them out. So really quickly, to cook quinoa is very simple. If you can cook rice, you can cook quinoa. And we did a mix of the white and the red. There's not a big nutritional difference in the colors. I just think it's pretty, and to me the texture is a little different. Is that correct?
Yeah, the red is a little bit more crunchy and has a little bit more of a nutty flavor. And they complement each other so well
Yeah.
when you mix it in the salad. That's how I like to do it as well.
And nutritionally, they're about the same, though. So you're not, it's really aesthetics and a little bit of texture. But and in the recipe, you'll see it really is as simple as rinse. Even if the quinoa says it's rinsed, I always rinse it because it does have a coating on it that can be a little off-tasting, just in the nature of the plant. So even if it's rinsed, I always just throw it in a mesh strainer, run it under water. You put it in a pot with some boiling water, let it cook, turn the water off or the flame off, and you'll see it has like a little sprout that comes out. And this salad is the first one that was on the table out there, so I hope you all tried it. And I hope for those of you, how many people was this your first time trying quinoa? See, okay, that's good. I'm glad because I'm glad. I think it doesn't look like it tastes, you know, which is true with a lot of foods. So this was just boiled. We spell out really easily, and the ratio of water is always the same regardless of the color of the quinoa you're cooking. And I would encourage you, do a big batch so you can use it. I mean, it's good in the fridge for 4 or 5 days if you cool it properly. That's why I spread it out thin. So this one we cooled the quinoa on a rimmed baking sheet. And you know you've cooked it right when it kind of separates still. This one that we're doing, the recipes in the book, we've modified it. We just put a few of the more colorful ingredients. But you can put a scoop of this on a bed of greens, like chopped romaine, baby spinach, mixed greens, iceberg. I mean, my husband will only really eat iceberg, but he'll eat it with this on it. So it's a great way to add a lot of nutritional value. And I mean, I even sometimes, even though I work here with access to just about anything under the sun, I bring little containers to work because it's easy to eat poorly and a lot when you're in a kitchen. I mean, a taste of this cream soup, a taste of that, and all those little tastes really add up. So my other thing is beans. Beans are so versatile. We used white beans. I think the recipe has garbanzos, but I don't care for garbanzos. So I chose a white bean. But you could do a Southwest one and do black beans and green chilies and diced tomato and roast a little bit of corn, jicama. I mean, it's the opportunities to really make a good basic nutritional grain taste different so you don't feel like you're eating the same thing all the time is wonderful. So we did white beans. And always if you're using canned beans, drain and rinse. That's my golden rule. Because otherwise, to me, it tastes like the can. I mean, I don't know that there's any scientific benefit to rinsing your...
Yeah, well, you can reduce the sodium content and the starch content. So.
Yeah. And a little bit of diced red onion. This is a lot. I'm not going to put all of this in. I love red and yellow bell peppers, not so much green, but whatever's in season. And we also put in your packet that little seasonality guide for produce. And just to let you know, that is to Southern California. Obviously, if you live other places in the country, it's going to be different. But if you buy seasonal produce, not only are you getting a more nutrient-rich vegetable because it hasn't traveled from Chile or Mexico when it wasn't ripe, they're usually less expensive if you're buying in season. So something to be said for that too. Bell peppers, this one has cucumber. I love doing grape tomatoes, the little ones. They're kind of a pain to cut in half, but I think that they're just sweet. I love the texture, and they bite into them. They just kind of burst in your mouth, and I'm a big grape tomato fan. And they have the yellow ones too that are really sweet and colorful. And tomatoes, again, a really high water fruit. I would definitely buy these ones organic. Cucumbers you peel, but feta cheese. Now, from a dietetic standpoint, you know feta cheese has sodium and some other things, but to me, it's like a little bit of cheese just doesn't hurt. That's just maybe we're a little bit. So I won't put this whole, if Debra wasn't here, I might put the whole thing, but. Cheese, and my homework's going to be the wine. And then fresh basil. Fresh basil is so versatile to me. I mean, I think a lot of people think of it as like an Italian herb, and it goes in sauce. And I put it in salads all the time because a little bit goes a long way, and it changes the flavor profile. And fresh herbs are great. I mean, I'll have a little sprig of thyme in the refrigerator, and I'll put it in chicken or drop it in chili that's simmering. I don't think that there's any right or wrong way to use them. So put the basil in, and then, like I said, we made this dressing, and all of the recipes do have very simple dressings to make if you want to get the blender out and do it. But like I said, shortcuts are fine, whether it's buying chopped produce or whether it's buying a salad dressing in a bottle. There's a lot of good salad dressings out there. Again, just read the ingredient label. So the other thing I like about quinoa is, to me, a little bit of dressing goes a really long way. The quinoa itself has a very nutty flavor, so I don't ever feel like it needs a lot of salad dressing. Whereas if I'm sitting down to a salad of just greens, I end up probably putting more than what's considered a portion on my salad. So my thing is just, mix it up, gently. And it is. I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed the one that we made, and I know Whole Foods made one as well. And what I liked about the one Whole Foods made is it was a little sweeter. It was more fruit, you know. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. I think it's just such a good base for some really interesting and a good way to use your leftover produce too. So that's pretty much, I mean, like I said, I want to leave time for questions because I think people might have a lot. You know, the GMO question, I wasn't even going to talk about that, but somebody was curious. So I don't know if Miriam collected cards or not yet. Okay. Oh, yeah, I would use that seasonality guide, absolutely, to look at, like I keep one, as long as I've been in food, I still keep one on my refrigerator, and that's it. So it's this right here, because I didn't do a PowerPoint, I'm sorry. This one right here. And it's a great way to see, and oftentimes, and I'll plug Whole Foods because I love their store. One, because when you walk into the produce department. And I think that's great. You're not walking into the bakery where they have like those tables of cupcakes and all that stuff that's going to try and lure you. You know, you walk into the produce section. So, and oftentimes the things that are in those big bins in the middle of the store that they have a ton of that they're trying to sell is what's in season because there's a huge supply of it. So I keep my little produce guide on my refrigerator, and I will look and see, okay, oh my gosh, eggplant's coming into season. So like this salad, for instance, I would chop up an eggplant. I don't bother peeling, but some people do. Chop up an eggplant, toss it in olive oil, a little salt and pepper, maybe some fresh herbs. I'd roast it and then toss it into the salad. I do that with any of these things, zucchini, peppers, anything like that. So I use the seasonal guide a lot because I do find that I save money on the produce when I buy that way as well. Right now, corn's coming into season. I think Sprouts had like something like 10 ears for $2. Before I had kids, I'm not going to lie and say I do it now, I would have brought those all home and soaked them in a tub in the backyard. I have a big galvanized bucket, and then I do them on the grill because they're so much easier if you cook them in husk and all on the grill. You got to soak them for about 3 hours so they don't just catch fire. The silk and the husk comes off so easily, and you're left with perfectly cooked corn because it's steamed inside that wet husk. And I would cut it off and freeze little bags.
My quick question is, when you boil vegetables versus steam them, don't you lose all the
You do. You don't lose all of the nutrients, but I think, you know, I would rather put something in the microwave, like broccoli. I always just zap it in the microwave really quick. Again, but I like my broccoli pretty al dente, for lack of a better word, not when it turns that other green color and gets really soft. They do say if you boil vegetables, though, save that water and go water your plants with it because a lot of the nutrients have been gone into the water.
No, that's exactly. Or I was going to say, or put that water into your ice cube trays, and then use it for your soup stock the next time around, or your casseroles.
Absolutely.
Great idea.
Yeah, yeah. So you do. If you boil things, if you boil anything, it's. I'm not a big fan of boiling. There's very few things that you really need to boil except pasta.
What's the difference between the light purple and the darker purple on this?
Oh, it's just adjusted on the line so it's more legible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And also, really, I'll ask questions. There's also another handout in there that lists all the local farmers markets because that's a great place to see what's in season. All of the farmers markets are going to have very locally grown, and it's a very green effort if you're looking for another way other than reusable grocery bags. The closer that things are, the better it is for the environment because it's not on a truck for 500 miles. A question?
Not everybody received that.
Oh, Miriam, do we have extra those
The seasonal.
handouts? Do we?
No, we don't.
Oh.
Oh.
Which is great. The downside is that we don't have enough of everything. But there's some, I was going to say, there's some next to people. And if you still don't have one on your way out, there's some note cards and at the registration table. Leave your name and address, please, so I can read it. And what you want us to send you. And we'll put it in the mail to you.
Yes.
So The real mail. Yes, I will do the real mail on these because I don't have it on email, so it's going to have to.
I can send you. I have one of them I think I have both
Yeah,
electronically.
don't worry about it. Just sign up, and we'll make sure you get it. But the other thing I'd like to mention is that we have time for the questions. Not that I want to stop the conversation, but what I'd like you to do is write your questions down for both Ellen and Debra, pass them to the center aisle, and Dr. Magalino will collect them. So just pass them, you guys to your right, you guys to your left, and we'll get the questions divvied up. Sorry. Is that okay?
No, yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. That's why, I mean, like I said, I could talk about GMOs and organic produce for 2 hours, but I think it's more important that people get to ask specifics.
So while we're doing that, first of all, thank you, Ellen.
You're welcome.
That's great. You guys should go on the road. Quite frankly, you guys are terrific. My name is Miriam Slevin. I'm the Cancer Survivorship Coordinator at Torrance Memorial and a member of the South Bay Survivorship Consortium. And I just want to point a couple of things out. I know some people have signed up on the store tours for Whole Foods, and if you haven't, I'd like you to consider thinking about it. They have promised a fabulous hour-long tour which includes food samples of things, hopefully, that are new things to us all to try. So I would encourage you to do that. If Whole Foods is not your cup of tea, then there are some flyers there from Beach Cities Health District, and the dietitian there, Diane Staso, does store tours at Vaughn's, which is the one on Beryl and Prospect. Okay. They do charge $40 per person. But if you're interested, that's also available. And these are the phone numbers for each of those. If you're not able to attend one of the 3 programs that Whole Foods has set up, then just feel free to give them a call. Mention to both places, if you call Beach Cities to arrange something, or Whole Foods in Torrance, mention that you are attending the South Bay Survivorship Consortium program on May 14th, and they'll know what to do with you, so to speak. Now, for those of you that enjoyed the art project, hopefully everybody took a look at those. They're celebrating their 10-year anniversary, Lilly Oncology, in this program, the Oncology on Canvas. And there's an opportunity for people who would like to submit their own art. So if you are so inclined, there's some beautiful cards on the table, and it'll give you information on how to contact them if you'd like to submit your own art, which I think would be incredibly cool. I, of course, cannot draw a straight line with a ruler, which may be modern art by somebody's definition. Please remember, if you didn't sign in on your way in, please sign in on your way out. That's how we keep track of everything. And that evaluation form, I know Dr. Hull mentioned it. I can't stress it enough. The topics that we presented since 2011 have all been based on your feedback. So you give us the direction of where we need to go next. So with that, one more thing. So these are the numbers for this. Both Ellen and Debra have graciously agreed to take questions via email from you. So if you go home and you think, I should have asked, or why didn't I, or now what, my favorite, okay, I'm sitting there with all these ingredients, now what do I do? You are welcome to email them, and they will get back to you. So with that, I will turn it back over to, are you ready? Dr. Hull, and we'll get the questions for Debra and Ellen. Please remember to give us your evaluations on your way out the door.
Well, thank you for all the wonderful questions. I'll just read the questions, and either Debra or Ellen can answer. The first question we have here in the audience: how can we wash our fruits and vegetables thoroughly while going through chemo? That's the first question.
My answer would be, honestly, try to buy organic. And the reason I say that is all the scrubbing in the world, if you're looking at a strawberry or a head of iceberg lettuce, when they're growing in the soil, it's going into the vegetable or fruit. So,
But what you could do is use like an acid base, so a little bit of vinegar and water will be a good rinse. And then I'm sure at Whole Foods they have branded product that you could buy to rinse your vegetables. And I know that they'll be happy to give you the name of some of those products.
The second question is pertaining to this first one. When washing your vegetables, what is the number of minutes that you should spend for washing?
For me, it depends. I use, like, if I'm chopping lettuce and I'm using a salad spinner, whether it's organic or not, because, sometimes you buy spinach and there's like, you wash it and there's sand, and you wash it and there's sand. So for me, I like to give everything a rinse, put it on the cutting board and chop it if it's lettuce, put it in the salad spinner, let it fill with water, drain it. I let it fill again, drain it, and then spin it dry. I would say if it's things like peaches, nectarines, apples, things with a hard skin, I actually have a dish sponge that's dedicated to vegetables and fruits only, and I don't put soap on it, but I use it as for like the abrasive quality of it to really get the dirt off, like a potato or something. If you're going to eat the potato skin, you can't just rinse it under cold water. You need to apply some friction. So,
No, I agree. I think those are great tips.
There is one more question about the same topic. Is it a good idea to wash veggies, fruits with vinegar and water, would you say?
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. I don't know the exact, if you want to write to me, I'll look up the exact proportions, but not to the point where it tastes like vinegar, because you don't want your apples to taste like vinegar. But the acid helps to break down the bacteria.
Okay. What are good examples of healthy snacks for taking to work?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to say I do keep the prepackaged thing of almonds, but I have to get the portion-controlled ones, or the bag sits there, and I eat too many. But for me, even working in a kitchen, I bring my own snacks from home, and I bring nuts, and I bring sometimes a scoop of cottage cheese if I have berries to go with it. I like crunchy things. So for me, if it's crunchy, I feel like it's a potato chip or something.
My favorite
But it's
food.
a carrot stick.
I think those are great ideas. The nuts, cut vegetables, fresh fruits. Sometimes yogurt, like a Greek yogurt, makes a really nice 3 o'clock snack. So I would say that the Fayet was probably your best bet, and try to get it plain if you can. And then you can add your own fruit or nuts to it. And it makes a nice, high-protein, low-carb, moderate in its calorie content snack. The problem with snacks that you really should keep your eye on is that a snack grows into a meal in no time. So, so be sure that when you're looking, if you're very active, a snack could be as much as 180, 200 calories. For those of us who are not moving around that much, I would tell you to keep your snacks closer to about 150 calories. And try to pair a carbohydrate, like a fruit, or a cracker, with a protein, like a piece of cheese or nuts.
Thank you. The next question, what is the recommended cooking duration for vegetables to benefit from the nutrient content? Is there something that be overcooked and not have the nutrient content?
Yeah, I would say, again, if you can direct versus indirect heat, if you can steam a vegetable, it's always going to be better than if you boil it. And the one time I do boil is if I have a lot of asparagus or broccoli and I just want to blanch it because I want to put it in a salad. But literally, you're putting that in the boiling water for 30 seconds, and then you're dropping it in ice water so it shocks the vegetable, stops the cooking, and then it retains that beautiful green color. So that's one of the few times I actually boil vegetables, is just if I'm going to blanch something. But I would say for myself personally, I do a lot of steaming.
Likewise. The only vegetable that I actually boil are beets. So I don't roast the beets, I actually boil them. And they're real easy to, you don't have to remove the skin, just cut off the greens. You could use the greens for a separate dish. Leave that little tail on the beet on because it won't bleed that much into your water with the tail. And then boil it as you would a potato. So when you're able to put a fork or knife through it, you know that it's ready. And then if you run it under cold water, they'll just pop out of their jackets. And that's the most fun for me because it's like finger painting. So then I eat a beet a day. So the only thing I would tell you is with beets, be aware that you can have red food color in your stools because we don't all have the enzymes to break down beets, the red coloring. And I remember one time my dad called me from like the bedroom, hiding in the closet, to tell me that he had red in his stool, and he was all upset. But I knew that my mother made fresh beets that night, so so it was one of her culinary, she would take a leap. So I said, don't worry about it. So, but be aware of that because we don't all have the enzyme to break down that red color.
And two, I just think, because I did this last night because it's too hot to turn the oven on. I mean, anybody that turns their oven on in this heat's crazy. But I grilled chicken, and I use aluminum foil and put all the vegetables, and I make a little packet, and I put it on the top shelf in the barbecue. And, I mean, I can't tell you how many minutes, but it kind of steams itself, and you don't have to really add any water. Throw some garlic in there. It's a great way to utilize the outdoors, and the vegetables always seem to come out really well.
Do you have to worry about using tin foil in cooking your food?
I hope not, because I do it a lot.
I hope not, too.
Foil, I know, reacts with acid. But I think I've noticed if you coat, like before I put the vegetables in the packet, I'll toss them in olive oil. Yeah. And I think that's olive oil and other fats, I'm sure, is just, I like to think, a little magic barrier between things like that. I don't know for sure, scientifically speaking, if the foil is doing something to the vegetable.
A lot of the cooking shows, you're using a cloth in between the tin foil and the food.
Oh, that's a good tip. That's a good tip, like a cheesecloth even. Yeah.
Yeah. I never wrap anything in foil for storage, I will say that, because the acid can react with the foil. If you cover lasagna with just foil, you'll see the foil sometimes gets eaten away at. But I personally think just for 5 or 10 minutes on a grill,
you're fine.
There's probably worse things.
I know we're running closer to 8 o'clock, running out of time, so some of you who have to leave, we're going to continue for a couple more minutes answering a few more questions. Please remember to turn in your evaluation, which is very valuable to us to bring on the next set of educational series. Okay, thank you. This question is probably better answered by Ellen. This information that has been provided on tonight's presentation, this person has a question. This information should be provided to the patient upon their diagnosis, or at least as soon as a patient is admitted to the hospital. Hospital food is nothing like this. Why?
I have to say, and our clinical nutrition manager, Sharon Plumley, came to help tonight. I share an office with her, and I think there she is, right there in the orange. I have to say that's for a few reasons. Unfortunately, most people that are here at the hospital are on some kind of modified diet, and the guidelines are very strict. And anytime I see a comment card that says the soup was so bland, I'm like, oh, they were on a low sodium. So that's a struggle. We're here to heal at the hospital, and I think that the hospital itself is doing a great job with programs such as this and sponsoring things on their websites to help people eat healthfully, but in a hospital setting, the guidelines are very rigid, and we do our best with those modified diets, but unfortunately, by the time a lot of people get to us, it is very strict. And to be honest, I don't know how many patients realize that they are on a modified diet. They might not realize they're having low-sodium chicken noodle soup and think, these people need to use some salt. So
I agree, and then I also think that when you're in the hospital, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of medications that you might be taking that can alter your taste buds. So, we're here to try to help, but we understand that trying to cart, quantity food to individual rooms in between you're taking tests and being, you're going down to X-ray, you're coming back, they're rewarming your tray. So we do the best that we can, and we know that we're using the best product we can.
And don't be afraid to ask for something that you feel might really make you feel better. And I do mean that honestly. We get a lot of special requests, and we rarely say no if it's within your prescribed diet.
Okay, we'll have one more question. What is best probiotics, not over the counter? Is there best probiotics naturally that you can get?
Yeah. So that would be basically from your yogurts. And then you want to feed your probiotics, so you want to feed them a good fiber source, because inulin is one of the fibers that will act as a prebiotic to feed your probiotic. So, so high fiber and yogurts would probably be your best bet for intestinal balance.
I know we're short of time tonight. We have many more questions here that we won't be able to get to, but here on the slide we have an email address for Debra, Nessel, and Ellen Ritter. They are welcoming your questions, so send them an email. They will get those answers back to you. And you will be also around at the end of the conference tonight to answer some questions in person. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening. It's been a very wonderful program, learning about healthy diet. And I'd like to thank our speakers for doing a great job and teaching all of us how to eat healthy. And thank you all for coming. And we will like to see you again next time. And if there's some special request you have, please jot it down on the evaluation. Thank you and good night.